As I started preparing for this episode, I soon realised it's going to be a multi-parter. I have far too much to share around the idea of being weird. Strange that. And with the help of the wonderful book Blessed Are the Weird by the fantastic Jacob Nordby, I want to kind of really get stuck into this topic. Blessed are the weird people, poets, misfits, writers, mystics, painters, troubadours, for they teach us to see the world through different eyes. It was my friend Mark Pearce, author of The Creative Wound, who first put me onto this book earlier this year when I was staying in North Wales, near to where Mark lives. He assumed I already knew the book, given how much of it was kind of very resonant and closely linked to the stuff that I kind of write about and talk about here. But I hadn't read it, I hadn't heard of it, I hadn't heard of Jacob Nordby, unfortunately, until that point. And when I did read it, I saw exactly what he meant. And I've been liaising with Jacob about potential interview, and I really wanted to get something sorted before exploring this topic, but we haven't managed to sort out a date yet. He's been busy over the summer putting on an event. He's writing another book now as well, so it's a bit difficult to kind of pin down a good time to chat, but I couldn't hold this any longer, and I just want to unpack that book and share some of the ideas with you, and hopefully we'll chat with Jacob at some point in the future, perhaps when he's written his next book. We can kind of get into that. But as I was making notes when I was reading the book, I realised it was far more than a single podcast episode could contain. In fact, depending on what happens as I record this, it might turn into more than two podcasts can contain. The notes are bursting with life and energy and potential avenues of exploration, and I really don't want to sell this short, because it's worth digging into, because there's so much of this stuff is resonant with what we're talking about as introverts, as highly sensitive people, as creative people, as gentle rebels, and all of this, and I think there's too much to just get into and allow to speak to us and to just soak in, that it's just not worth rushing through it and moving on to something else before we've kind of juiced got the juice out of this stuff. When I read the book, I kept thinking, this is a perfect companion for gentle rebels. This speaks into the heart of so much of what we're about. The way that we see, the way that we feel, the way that we interact with the world. This is so resonant, everything that Jacob Nordby is saying here. And it's all around this kind of concept of weird. Weirdians, I think he refers to weird people as. It's not weirdos, which is nice, because I think there's an important distinction there in some ways. But I'll start with this question, do you feel weird? And what I mean by that is, do you feel like the options for fitting in make you feel more left out on the outside? And actually, as a creative misfit, you've probably had experiences of using what Nordby calls this tension and loneliness to forge something magnificent, rather than drawing attention to the fact that, no one understands you, like some attention-seeking teenager. You may have tried to actually cover up the fact that you feel and see and do things differently, and channel this through a kind of creativity, through connection, through commitment to causes, contribution to others, and expressions of solidarity with people who maybe are on the fringes, on the outside, the voiceless. The gift of not fitting in is often paralleled by a deep connection with the parts of the world and the people around who get overlooked by the mainstream, by the glitz, by the glamour, by the normalized ways of measuring success.
I'm like butter from the fridge, I'm pretty hard to spread, I'm not like margarine which will spread thinly on your bread, I'm lumpy when you meet me, but give me a little time, it'll be worth the wait when you see what's on my mind, see what's on my mind, see what's on my mind, it'll be worth the wait when you see what's on my mind.
In these episodes, I want to explore some of the things that make you weird, that make me weird, that make us weird, and encourage you with the reassurance that those very things that you might sometimes feel like you want to kind of change or hide or cover up because they make you feel different are in fact the very things that make you truly belong in this world. They're the things we need from you. Your unique points of connection, contribution, individuality, and creative potential. This stuff draws together a lot of other themes that we've talked about this year on the podcast already. It feels like a good opportunity to just kind of stop and take heed and reflect and remind ourselves of what truly matters in life to us, what we want life to look like, what we want our lives to reflect, those values that we have inside us that we want to kind of have shining out from the expression of our lives themselves. Nordby points out the truth that not everyone is weird, at least not in the way we're talking about here. He says, sure, everyone has weird little quirks in their personality, but not everyone has lived through the difficult experience of not fitting in. But this is also not about creating some exclusive club where people who don't fit in can fit in together and plot against the normal people who don't understand. In fact, that's the complete opposite of what it means to be a gentle rebel and being a blessed weirdian. Because fitting in, barricading the doors and saying, okay, the outside is now the inside. You don't understand. We're different from you. This is our club. Leave us alone. Pointing fingers at other people, blaming them for making you feel left out. That's the normal thing to do. That's the normal way of operating. That's not the way of the blessed weirdian. And Nordby suggests that if you think this is the purpose of the book, then you've completely missed the point. This isn't about taking revenge or helping karma right a lot of wrongs. That does nothing but activate what transactional analysis founder Stephen Cartman called the drama triangle, in which the victim becomes the persecutor, who is then confronted by the rescuer, and the cycle continues. Blessed weirdians are full of sensitivity and self-consciousness, which Jacob Nordby outlines with a beautiful quote from an unknown source. Empathetic people, dreamers and idealists, have this sort of accidental power. Most spend their early years ridden with self-doubt, insecurity, and people-pleasing habits, but their journey is inevitably derailed when this comfortable life gets uprooted by an unexpected darkness. Suddenly their trusted methods no longer seem to bring them happiness. At first, this depression convinces them that they might never feel joyful again. But ultimately, it sees them on a quest for something more, for love, justice, and wisdom. Once this adventure begins, there is no stopping a dreamer. And when dreamers unite, well, that's how we start to change the world. What a powerful image. I bet something speaks to you from within there. In this week's extended play version of the podcast, I explore that quote and kind of look at how it reflects my own experience of life, and the kind of certain parts of who I am and how I've interacted with the world and other people and that kind of stuff. So yeah, the extended play stuff it's a Patreon exclusive, it's a bonus podcast feed where I get a little bit more candid and explore things from a more personal point of view than on this main episode. So if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on that and a whole range of other stuff, you get access to all the previous episodes as well and other things, then go to andymort.com/Patreon. It's Patreon, and you can get access to the other podcast feed, the bonus podcast feed there, or you can access video versions of that as well. So yeah, this idea, the dreamer, the idealist, self-doubt, insecurity, people-pleasing, moments derailed by darkness, thrown into confusion, away from the things you previously trusted to bring stability and happiness. The darkness feels like it's tearing away your capacity for joy. It's something that needs to be ridded from your life. But what you may actually discover is that it's the darkness that becomes a lens to see the light, for love, justice, wisdom, and a return to the dreaming, where most people simply numb themselves to the darkness or attempt to pacify and ignore it. Empathetic, sensitive, gentle rebels find the cracks where the light gets in and smash down the walls to let the whole place flood with this brilliance. Uniting with other blessed weirdos on the outside, sharing this experience and understanding of life on the outside of fitting in. Because they know that this is where the true world-changing magic happens. As Nordby says, there's a degree of outward expression that takes place that makes the blessed weird kind of obvious. The lifestyle choices that we might make, the values we hold about jobs, about living, about relationships and that kind of stuff. But all of these things can also be kind of just simply window dressing for insecurities. And it can point to a heart that is searching deep within each one of us. Not searching for attention, but searching for what is real. Fighting dogma, fighting tradition and ritual that don't seem to serve a purpose except for keeping the status quo. Fighting the prevailing unthinking opinions that hold power over people. He says that we aren't likely to kind of jump on bandwagons or join popular crusades. We're skeptical about magic bullets, 1 minute fixes or tidy 7-step solutions to anything. We've been living this life as ourselves the hard way for a long time. We know better than to imagine that merely reading the right books or sharing intelligent memes or getting tattoos or dressing like insert popular non-conformist idol here will satisfy our need to do life our way, all the way. This made me laugh when I first read it, because it's like, he's been following me around and writing down what is true for me, yet I hadn't been able to kind of articulate for myself. I rarely do kind of podcasts with that, steps to solutions. I've tried, as you'll know if you've listened for a while. But I kind of get myself too tied up in knots and nuance and grey areas and all of that sort of stuff, and thinking just complete self-doubt and those moments where you're thinking, I've got this completely wrong. Actually, what I believe is the opposite of what I think I'm saying. Because life's just not that simple. I'm also turned off things when they become overrun by popularity. Not because I want to be unique or, I don't want everybody else to know what the thing that I know and that sort of stuff. But because things get corrupted and lose their heart, it's more a reflection of what happens when things become popular than the fact that something's got popular. And it's important to recognize the lifespan of things, especially when they go from being kind of grassroots and soul-filled to mainstream, popular and explosively expansive and kind of growth-orientated. I much prefer something that is unsuccessful but soulful than something that is successful but empty. And that might sound obvious, but for most people, the mainstream, that is how the mainstream is defined. Things that are successful, things that are popular, but they're ultimately empty. That is, if you're seen to be engaging with that is more of a badge of honor, a sign of something, than to be supporting something unsuccessful, but full of soul, full of something deeper, full of something that actually means something. I've mentioned before about my experience of changing football supporting allegiances as a child. I used to be a massive Man United fan, and I bought a duvet cover. It was a Man United duvet cover, big picture of Ryan Giggs on the front. And I kept getting catalogues through the post trying to basically sell me more merchandise, more Man United crap. And a little while earlier, my godfather had taken me to see Stockport County play. I'd dreamed of going to see Man United play, but tickets were too expensive. We went to Old Trafford when I was staying with them up in Manchester. Had a little look around the outside of the ground, and I suppose it's quite hadn't really thought about the relevance of the inside and the outside thing here, but we could kind of see a sneak peek of the pitch. We were on the outside looking in, and my dad asked one of the stewards whether we could just sort of get a proper little look, just kind of walk down this, I guess it was a little side alley thing, and they said no, and ushered us away. So we weren't allowed on the inside. We were just stuck on the outside of this magnificent stadium that I dreamed of going there since I could remember as a Manchester United fan. And so we went to the club shop, and the only thing that I could afford in the club shop was a magazine, which again was pretty much more of a catalogue than a magazine, but it cost me £5, which at the time was an enormous amount of money for me. But I had to go away with something. I needed some kind of memorabilia to leave that experience with. And I was reflecting on it kind of later on, and with receiving all these catalogues and thinking, I don't matter. My support is insignificant. And I'd asked Man United to stop sending me marketing. I think I wrote to them. I wouldn't have phoned them because I hate the phone. And I think I wrote to them and just said, can you stop sending me these things? It feels disrespectful. I was 12 at the time. And then I had a kind of stirring inside me that was like, I think I'm going to, do you know what? I think I'm going to break up with Man United. And I'm going to maybe test the water with Stockport. And I remember I wrote to Stockport County. I don't know who I addressed it to, but basically wrote them a handwritten letter to tell them that I was planning on supporting them from now on. I live far away. I'm not local. I don't know how many fans they have down in Leamington, but that's where I am. And within a week or two, they'd sent me a big package full of, it had some match day programs from previous games. It had local media photos that had been taken by the local press from live games. It had a big signed club photo, and it had basically been signed by the majority of the team with personalised signatures addressed to me. And that went on my wall, and I became a massive Stockport County fan. And that gesture meant the world. And while all my friends thought I was weird because I didn't support, Man United anymore, and I didn't support Liverpool or Arsenal or any of the actually successful teams, they were the main clubs at the time, I was delighted to be a blessed weirdian. It meant so much more. It had meaning to it to be a Stockport County fan, and it had that story of connection to the thing that was also founded on this rupture between me and Manchester United. It was founded on this thing that was the reason that I had sought another path, which was that I could not get on the inside. And I didn't want to be on the inside, but it was, you can't get on the inside. And yeah, it just felt like a decision that aligned with my values, even as a 12-year-old. So why would we ever not want to be weird? Gentle rebels, they're the weird. They're the ones who do things because they're right, not because they're right. At least we have the underlying drive to do things because they're right. They feel right. They are right. They're the right things to do, not because we're told that they are right. That if you want to do things right, then you'll do this. But this gets pulled out of us as we get older. We're told to conform, to be realistic, to fit in, to be like everybody else. Except we're told this stuff often by people who wish that they could be different, be weird, be more childlike in their creativity and imagination. The people that resent the fact that, they're not doing really what they want to be doing. They're not living life in the potential that they dreamed that they could when they were younger. We get paralyzed by fear and mediocrity. Our definitions of success, love, hope, joy, these all shift to something in this compressed space where all we can dream of is, a few beers at the weekend, a nice holiday a couple of times a year. Just doing the things that are expected of us. When did we get so caught in our thinking? When did we lose our spirits, our imaginations, our ability to live, to love, to learn, to laugh like we didn't care about what anybody else would think? The way that we did when we were kids. When we were kids, our weird was abundant. But as we grow older, we learn to protect ourselves, to act normal and turn down the light. We're going to do some exploring now to see how we can turn that light back on and shine it in the eyes of the world in ways we never dared dream possible. Because as we mentioned earlier, when you get uprooted by the darkness in unexpected ways, the weird ones allow themselves to turn into vessels of light and love from within that stuff. And boy, do we need your example right now as you do that. That's huge. And by the end of these episodes, I want you to feel like you're not alone and like you can let that weird shine out like the brightest friggin' star. So that was just my introduction to this stuff. Let's get into some of the lessons or the takeaways that I've had from after reading the book. I'll just have a little breather first. Just have a little glass of water. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to be breaking this into 3 episodes. As I said earlier, I want to do it justice, so I'm going to explore 3 main points today. Then there are 12 more areas to look at after that. So we'll probably do 6 next week, 6 the week after, or something around that kind of area. So I hope that sounds okay with you. I just think it's really worth giving time to. So so where are we going to start? How about with the way that we see things? So Jacob Nordby said that weird people have always been the ones who paid attention to the beauty that they felt inside and tried to do something with it after the rock bottom demands of existence were met. They couldn't help it because to them expressing the song of their soul was as critical as food, water or shelter. Does that ring true for you? It really does for me. You know, when I go without creating something for too long, I feel this build up, this yearning, this longing, a pent up frustration, and this appetite to just make, to create, to build, to manufacture something out of nothing. You know, it doesn't even matter what it is. I've had this satisfied by like photography, even though I'm not a photographer, poetry, even though I'm not a poet, and drawing or painting, even though I'm not a painter. I remember someone saying when I was younger that philosophy is like this elite preserve. It's preserved for an affluent, developed, satisfied culture. It's the thing that you have as a luxury after everything else is kind of all the other needs are met. You're not interested in philosophy if you're hungry or homeless. And while there's truth in the fact that you can't actually physically do anything unless certain basic needs on the bottom of that, Maslow's hierarchy of needs are met, it's complete rubbish that philosophy is something that only those in positions of wealth or privilege or education have time to reflect on. I've met philosophical rebels in all walks of life, from all backgrounds and all types of personality. They're thinking, feeling and deeply empathetic people who found their life on meaningful values first and foremost. Unlike others who might say, it's a luxury for a time off in the future when I'm rich and wealthy and have nothing to worry about and I've got time to actually think about what life means. For the blessed weirdians, it's our philosophy, it's our search for meaning, it's our need for that sense of purpose that teaches us that we're already rich and wealthy and have ways to deal with the worries of everyday life. Nordby says that in this new renaissance, the highest value currency is not money or faster machines. It's the ability to see and keep seeing the world through different eyes and then do something with the unique way you see it. In the 3rd episode, we're going to look at the doings of this, I suppose. So the implications of living with our weird as artists and what it means to be an artist in the context of what I say at the end of each of these podcast episodes, that we can all be artists, that we all are artists if we make the choice to be, if we change the way that we see the potential for our actions in the world, essentially. And we will detach the links we create between living creatively and making money from our creative spirit and artistic approach to everyday life. It's not that no one else sees the things you do. People do see the things that you see, but maybe just not in the same way. not with the same questions, the same curiosities, the same concern. Where others see things and seek to get onto the inside, you maybe see things from the perspective of the outside, and that can feel lonely and isolating. But when you begin to realize that you're not alone in the way that you see things, real change, real community, real transformation becomes possible. Plan A for the system is to get everyone to believe that the answers and the solutions to life's innate existential fragmentation is found on the inside. Come and join us on the inside of this. If, however, we don't conform to that, Plan B is to make those who know there is no answer on the inside feel alienated and alone on the outside. But hopefully what's becoming abundantly clear is that the outside is the place to be. The weirdians, the rebels, the curious, the lovers, the compassionate, the sensitive feelers, and the deep prophetic thinkers, we're all on the outside. It's like we've been playing dodgeball. You know, the kind where everybody's in the middle of a square. A few people are on the outside throwing balls. And the longer the game goes on, the more people end up sitting out because they get hit and they have to come out and join in throwing balls from the outside. And we think the game is to be the last person standing on the inside. But actually, what if getting hit is the trigger for the start of the true game? For the true game starts when you step on the outside and start throwing the balls. Your score is the number of hits that you make. You can't score while you're trying to avoid the inevitable. When you're dodging and ducking and weaving, all these existential threats flying at you from all angles, these things trying to derail you and stop you from winning the game. But actually, the game is not started until you're hit. The moment you move to the outside, that's when you can relax. That's when you can truly live. That's where there's nothing to avoid. The worst has already happened. Now you just get to have fun. I'm not sure about that metaphor. It feels like it makes a lot of sense, but it also feels very flawed in many ways. Another key takeaway from the book is the idea that that we're not one thing and nothing is ever wasted. Nordby talks about the Renaissance life. You know, we discuss multi-potentialism a bit on the podcast. You know, Emily Wapnick's work with the putty-like community. The idea that we're not constrained to one thing. We can have a variety of different creative pursuits and interests in life, which can sometimes be difficult to reconcile in a world that wants us to specialize but needs us to generalize. And this kind of this internal conflict that goes on in that sense. This idea that we are not one thing stretches into all areas of our being, not just what we do, but who we are. And Jacob Nordby says, "My heart reaches out to embrace all of us who deal with the confusing tension of the call to a Renaissance life. We are not one thing. We are not one person. We are many and all at the same time. Life is not simple or straightforward for those of us who might fight to express the many truths of who we are in a world that says, just pick something and do it." He goes on to remind us that nothing is wasted. You know, all of our experiences, the broken pieces of relationships and half-formed careers, the things that felt like they were wrong or didn't work, everything you are and have been, may appear to be a basket of dusty shards, but they all have their place in the kaleidoscope of brilliance. As long as you trust enough to believe that this is true, as you kind of faithfully stick with the task of becoming yourself, this turns all those missed opportunities, regrets, and half-attempted ideas and intentions that never made it to reality much more than the gaps and the holes that they feel like they are. They make up the picture of who you are right now and the backbone of who you are becoming, where you are going from here. I think it's a beautiful note to kind of leave this first episode on. And we'll explore Nordby's thoughts and about kind of sensitivity and that kind of stuff next week. For those of you who wish you could kind of turn down your sensitivity, become kind of numb to the negative side, the curse of it, and that's another thing I talk about in the extended play episode this week is the difference between seeing things as a blessing and a curse, and actually how we can hold those things both at the same time. That being weird, feeling weird, can be a blessing and it can be a curse. Sensitivity can be a blessing and a curse. Being a rebel can be a blessing and a curse. But Nordby says the biggest fear for the highly sensitive, weird, gentle rebel is numbness, essentially. The cost we pay for the deep sensations that make the most vital fuel for existence is unwanted depth of feeling. But it's worth it. He says, I fear numbness. My raw senses that receive all the nuanced vibrations are not just icing on the cake for me. They're the whole cake, the plate, the table, and the music too. If I can't feel, I can't access what for me is the most vital fuel of existence. I bet that's true for so many of you listening to this as well. Both the gift and the curse of sensitivity, a way of being in the world that isn't a choice. You can't have some without all. It's all or nothing. The beauty and the pain, the vision and the darkness, the presence and the absence. If you've ever gone into the numbness, you'll know that it sucks all the life out of us. When you can't feel the pain any longer, it takes away your capacity for joy, depth, and beauty as well. And it's always been my aim through my work here to help us experience the full spectrum, to manage it, to live in conjunction with it so that it flourishes, but never to turn off the unwanted stuff, to hold it in a sense with a kind of balance, with a appreciation and an understanding that with one side comes the other. Because if we turn the unwanted stuff off, we turn off the entire flow. And we don't want to do that. So I hope this has been of some value to you. Do join me next time for some more reflections on the blessed weirdians and weirdness and all that good stuff. If you want to get hold of Jacob Nordby's book, then there is a link in the show notes, or just go and find it wherever you like to buy or borrow books generally. So Blessed Are the Weird is the name of the book. Really great read. So yes. Good. Well, thank you so much for listening today. I hope this has been helpful in some way. If it has, then please do consider supporting the show by leaving a review and a rating wherever you listen to it. Share it on social media. Both of those are amazing ways to get this episode and previous episodes into more of the ears of introverts and sensitive types, searching for help, support, connection, community with other people who resonate with the ideas and topics that we're exploring. If we can make just one more gentle rebel aware of their own unique value and the blessing of it, then ultimately we're going to be better off as a whole, because that's going to impact the world in good ways. So if you could do that, it'd be amazing. Thanks so much to those of you who already have shared and commented and all of that stuff. Really, really appreciate it. Do go and check out the extended play version of the podcast. Remember, andymort.com/Patreon, or just search for Andy Mort on Patreon itself, and you should find it there. It'd be great to connect with you in that little community as well. So I'll be back again next time with another episode of the Gentle Rebel podcast. Until then, do remember, you're an artist. The world needs your art. Now go and make somebody's day. Goodbye.
Disguise we can